As I got out of my Jeep on a recent grocery store run, I heard this unmistakable sound. As I stopped and looked up to the sky overhead, my grandson, he asked me, "Hey, Papa, why do you look up every time you hear a helicopter coming?" "Oh, Manny, that's not just any helicopter coming. That sound you hear, that's a sound of a very special helicopter." "What special helicopter, Papa?" Listen, listen closely, man. That sound you hear, that sort of deep, thumping, whop, whop, whop sound, that's the sound of a Huey helicopter. "Well, Papa, what's so special about a Huey?" "Oh, well, now that's a really big question, Manny. Come on, let's sit down here. I'll try to tell you why that helicopter is so special to me. Now, first of all, that sound you hear, that whopping sound, when you first hear it, notice that you can't see the helicopter, but you know it's coming. When you hear that sound, it always starts far away. And as it gets closer, it changes. It becomes a low and faster thumping sound. When you hear that, you might not be able to see her even yet, but you know she's getting very close. Let me tell you another thing about how the Huey sounds, Manny. Every time a Huey passes over my head nowadays, my mind hears not just one sound of a Huey, but many different sounds. And each of those sounds I hear are connected some way or another with a memory I have of her while I was in Vietnam. Here's what I mean. I'm reminded of the chopper pilots and chopper crews, for example. The crew chiefs and gunners I flew with every day. They were young men, many of them not much older than you, Manny, some of them still in their teens. I'm reminded of those brave chopper crews and courageous soldiers coming together each and every day, advancing in formations of 5 and 10 Hueys, swooping down into hot landing zones, we called them LZs, with their guns blazing and bombs and rockets exploding all around, warning all present that Huey's wrath was about to be unleashed upon freedom's enemy. That, Manny, is Huey's power of assault, her air mobility. That is what I call Huey's sound of strength. And then I'm reminded of men beckoning her urgently to come to their aid, to resupply them with bullets and water and food. Even under intense fire, she had to get down to the men below. Her mission to resupply often delivered those men who called upon her from the certainty of death. For she always tried her best, risking everything to complete her mission. Always be there with what the infantrymen needed to survive the brutal battles. We called those men of infantry on the ground the grunts. This ability for Huey to resupply her grunts on the ground below with firepower and water and nourishment was one of Huey's most critical missions. It provided the grunts with the ability to survive a hard-fought battle. It made them more secure and saved many, many lives. This sound is what I like to think of Huey's sweet sound of security. And then I'm also reminded of the battle-worn men looking out to the horizon, awaiting anxiously to hear the first faint sound of her blade slapping the distant wind, praying she will come down quickly and lift them up safely from the grip of the battlefield, of the men slipping onto her hard deck, resting their tired and weary bones and dirty bodies as fresh winds would flow across her belly, cooling them off. Sometimes those men would even crack a slight smile as they were lifted off because they realized, man, this bad day is now behind me. They knew they would soon get a shower, a warm meal, and maybe a good night's rest on a dry cot. For this Manny was Huey rescuing these poor souls from the gates of hell. This is what I call Huey's sound of salvation. And sometimes, Manny, my eyes get misty when I think about the men pleading over their radio for Huey to find the smoke quickly and call the color purple or red or yellow. Desperately sounding the alarm over the radio to Huey's crew to swoop down quickly, please. For one of theirs, they fear, is dying. Dropping out of the sky, Huey would flare her white blades wildly to ease it to a very tight landing zone, while brothers of the fallen would race to her skids with dark faces of fear, with worry their brave and close buddy is about to be lost forever. She would ascend rapidly upward before turning her nose in the direction of a field hospital somewhere. Destiny's keeper. She knows every second delayed is a second too many. Every minute lost is a minute closer to eternity. As she would fly off into the horizon, the eyes left behind tear over as they wave Huey on with God's speed, knowing not what will become of their battle-wounded brother. For as long as these grunts live, this buddy, fallen in combat, will always be their beloved brother. For this Manny is what I call Huey's sad sound of sorrow. Then I'm reminded of the men who were her guardians. These were the crewmen of Huey, who bathed her diesel-stained decks and caressed her fragile, thin skin. These were the men who, with the skill of a corpsman, could repair her wounds of combat, patching up her bullet holes and torn apart skin. Like a magical wizard, they performed miracles to keep her flying, to fulfill her ever-pressing mission of sport and hope. And when she was airborne, these were the courageous men who sat in the corners of her belly, guns at the ready. These guys were the last face a grunt saw as he jumped headlong off Huey's skins into the dense jungle or a wet rice paddy. And they were the first face a grunt saw when he slid his butt back on board. And when they could, these men would offer the weary grunt a smile to reassure him they were now in good hands again, safe. And on a day when the green flashes of death would speed towards her, these were the men who fought back with ferocious firepower, their bodies always facing towards the incoming fire, facing the enemy, protecting with their life Huey's fragile body and all souls aboard. Manny, these brave men, they are Huey's sound of spirit. They were the spirit of Huey. Now, Manny, there is one more sound of Huey I have to tell you about, and that is of the men who sat at her controls, the chopper pilots, the bold and brazen young Army pilots filled to the brim with a passion and pride to serve and support all that needed Huey's salvation. Whenever their infantry brothers called, they came. They would boldly come down from the sky through a hail of bullets and bursting RPGs. They were determined men. They were brave men. But some say they were crazy men. After all, why would a young man in his late teens enlist in the Army to become a chopper pilot? You gotta be crazy. One famed war correspondent called these men of the Huey God's own lunatics. And maybe they were. But many who saw their wild antics and incredible feats in combat called them just plain crazy. Sometimes downright insane. Whatever you call them, whatever they were there for the grunt. The grunt was their reason to exist, their reason to rise up every day and fire up Huey's powerful engines. And with her cyclic and collective in his capable hands, they pushed the limits every day until they finally went back to the world. Or unfortunately, as too many, they went home covered in the flag they so dearly loved. They were as one, these men and machine. They were Huey's soul. And this sound, Manny, is what I think of as Huey's sound of soul. Hey, look up. Look up over there, Manny. Do you see her? She's coming our way now. She's sure a beautiful sight for these old eyes. There she goes. God, I love that sound. That sweet sound of her blades singing in the wind. So long, my good friend. Godspeed.